Normally, I'm not one to talk about any kind of discourse. I'd rather the channel be, for the most part, fun. It's why you have to wait months at a time for me to post a video where I only talk trash about stuff. But recently, on everyone's treasured tiffing tract to transmit turmoil Twitter, there's been heated arguments over one specific inclusion, or lack thereof, in some, or dare I say, every single video game. A topic so controversial, so unsavory, so insane, you might have to shield your eyes, protect your ears, and ring the notification bell after liking, commenting, and subscribing to be notified whenever I upload. You have been warned. Also, get me to 2,500 subs by the end of the year, please, thanks. What is this heinous discussion, you may ask? Why, it's about easy modes. Wait, easy mode? Wasn't that something people yacked on about in the 2000s and kinda stopped caring about since? Okay, so what's the big deal here? Let's see. If you play on easy mode, you think games are just a trend and think that games should just be catered to you. Okay. Easy modes are good because games aren't supposed to be stressful and you hate watering crops in Stardew Valley. Okay. Why do we let these situations get so out of hand again? Considering I talk a lot about challenge runs, speed runs, etc., but also being, you know, Kirby fan, Kirby games are typically seen as pretty easy on all that. What do I think about difficulty and easy modes? Truth be told, I think you should just play whatever difficulty you want and find what you like, but if that was the whole truth, I wouldn't be making this video, or at the very least, it'd be barely over a minute, and you'd be seeing my end card right about now. A lot of what I think about easy modes and difficulty in general comes down to artistic vision. What do the developers, designers, and debonnaires want you to experience? Is it specifically something easy, something hard, or do they want to leave the difficulty up to the player? The answer comes in as many forms as there are subscribers on my channel. Oh, hold on, just okay, there we go. So I'm going to tackle this sensitive topic by talking about different ways that easy modes, and even hard modes in some cases, as I feel the opposite is just as important, are approachable by developers and slowly, but surely, explain what I think about easy modes and difficulties in general. Think of it like a conversation with a friend, except it's one-sided, and it's scripted, and you're not talking to a friend, unless you are my friend, in which, Before getting into specifics though, I am aware that more reasonable arguments exist, like getting good at games is rewarding and easy modes can take that away. Trust me, I can think of some easy modes that totally go against what feels like the entire point of a game, or that easy modes help people with physical disabilities to actually keep up with a game. Trust me, I have muscular dystrophy, which is a full body disability that results in very weak muscular tissue, so I get where you're coming from too. My videos tend to have a lot of weird jokes and especially heavy irony in them, but genuinely, both of these are good arguments. Just wanted to get that out of the way before going any further and going back to making stupid fun jokes again. Segue into a sentence that's not a funny, stupid joke. Unlike most other art forms, games are interactive, and dealing with skill levels is something that any game developer has to plan around. While I personally think satisfying movement is the most crucial thing for any game to get right, difficulty is still one of the more important things that they have to get done right. And by done right, I mean that it needs to be harmonious, fancy, with the game's artistic vision. Kirby's Dream Land, for example, was made to be approachable for anybody, and I mean anybody. For people who've never played a game before, aren't very good at them, or are very casual, or they're a speedrunner or something, that doesn't count. The normal mode is a calm, peaceful, easy affair. For those looking for a more serious challenge, the extra mode is a tough, fast, insane difficulty jump. On the other hand, you can be like Mega Man Legends and... Okay, So first playthrough, you play on normal mode, you play it, you have a great time. Mega Man Legends, fantastic game.
Miss Tron, are you alright?
Right on. Credits roll, and you unlock hard mode. Cool. Those who want to play the game again and challenge themselves can have a ball. You go through hard mode, overcome every obstacle, and you beat it. Surely the game can't reward you again, right? Wrong. The game rewards you with... Yep. This isn't an editing joke or anything. You are rewarded for clearing hard mode with easy mode.
Well, what else could you expect from a crab calling, right?
You know what, though? I love this. And, okay, a part of it is just because of how stupid it all sounds. But even in practice, I really like it. And it represents why easy modes can work for anybody. The Kirby's Dreamland kind of anybody. See, easy mode in Legends is basically a new game plus. You start out with the Buster Max, an upgrade that makes all of your standard shots the best that they can be in terms of strength, speed, distance, everything, as well as the roller skates, which let you move faster. The Zenny, the currency in Mega Man Legends, that's dropped from enemies is also quadrupled. Imagine having that much money in real life. The point of easy mode here isn't simply to make the game easier, it's to reward players who have mastered the game enough to clear it on hard mode or clear normal mode in under 3 hours. Nice looking out for speedrunners, Capcom, I appreciate you. By letting them go to town and crush everything in their way. I actually prefer the Mega Man Legends approach to the Kirby's Dreamland one. Yeah, I know, I prefer something over Kirby. Shocking. But they both work for the kind of audiences that they're trying to appeal to. But, okay, not every game has to handle difficulty as well as Clock Simulator handles being a clock simulator. Simple difficulty sliders do exist after all. For example, you can be crazy like Fire Emblem Shadow Dragon and have one normal difficulty alongside 5 different hard difficulties. I think this is a really smart idea on paper because it means people who want an easier time only have one simple difficulty setting to worry about, while anyone who wants a challenge can play on hard and pick a difficulty experience suited to what they want. The problem is that while I think that hard 1 through 3 are fine for the most part, hard 4 and hard 5 are not. When the boss of the second chapter can reliably kill all but 2 or 3 of your units in a single round of combat, and none of the units that he can't easily kill don't deal a lot of damage and get 2-shot, I feel like we've got some problems. For most of the game, enemies are way too strong and difficult considering your units in comparison are just not good. Neither Gordon or Doga would survive this.
You big jerks!
Get back here!
But hey, at the very least, the difficulties actually cater to different skill levels. They aren't as simple as pick a difficulty and the AI will be better or worse, like in a fighting game or something. I love fighting games, but they suffer this problem bad. And it's a shame because fighting games have such easy ways to handle difficulty sliders since so much is going on in them. You could increase or decrease damage given, taken, meter gain, super damage. There's so much more than just making the AI cheaper or stupider. So what's an example of a game with meaningful changes between the difficulties? Well, it being the old instigator for many easy mode rants, I think it's fitting that we talk about Touhou. Using the 12th game as an example for no reason other than the fact that I like it the most, my video, Touhou games allow you to choose one of 4 difficulties, those being easy, normal, hard, or lunatic. And while look, I'm certainly insane, I am not insane enough to do lunatic. That said, the difficulty scaling between easy, normal, and hard is very good. Easy mode is sure to give newcomers a challenge, normal mode is good for people like me who don't play these kinds of games much but generally okay at them, and hard mode is a lot of fun for that extra challenge. In this regard, I have no immediate complaints. But I've never been a fan of the simple, selected difficulty, all unlocked and made clear to the player from the start. Now I'll explain why later on. My issue with Touhou specifically is that the easy mode forces a bad ending and locks you out of the final level, and by extension, the extra stage. Now, locking you out of the extra stage is totally fine, considering that the difficulty of those is closer to hard, or even lunatic, than it is easy. And while it's pretty scummy, I personally don't mind forcing a bad ending. I kind of like that it motivates people to learn the game more. Touhou is always the short kind of game that really benefits from being so fun to play, you're really willing to practice for hours and get better at it. I wouldn't mind this too much at all if it didn't lock you out of the final level. I don't think that's ever been a good call. Unlike Legends, it's clear that the sole point of easy mode here is to be easier, so why limit how far the player can go? There just winds up being no satisfaction in clearing easy mode, to the point where I have to ask, why include it at all? Newer players miss out on the satisfaction of beating it, and more experienced players lose out of the satisfaction of beating it. And there's another reason that you can't view this as a Legend-style New Game Plus of sorts. But guess what? As of the 15th game, easy mode no longer locks you out of the final stage. That's cool, but why did it take so long? Going back to artistic vision, I understand that these were made to be difficult games. So why include an easy mode? For 15 and onward, fine. You want to get more casual players in, so you have the easy mode that doesn't lock them out, fine. But 14 and beforehand? To me, it feels pointless. A waste of time that could be put into another area of the game. More extra stages, side content, more playable characters. I don't know, mini games, just something. I really like Touhou, but so many of the games feel so similar because they're all structured the same. UFO definitely bucks that trend in a couple of ways, and it's part of the reasons why I like it so much, but we're not talking about that right now. Maybe someday. That said, at least it functions. For an example of where the difficulty slider, I don't know, technically does what it's supposed to do, but is far from what you'd call good, look no further than Mega Man X6. Because I'm so Kirby and Fire Emblem focused, I don't get to talk about this game much, but I hate it. No contest, this is my least favorite game out of the very many that I've played. Before my first playthrough way back, I played on normal, and the sheer amount of nonsense in the levels is staggering. I don't know how intentional it is, but it certainly feels like every stupid bit of every stupid level was intentionally put in to make the experience harder. It winds up being far more tedious and stupid and dumb than anything. But yeah, you have to make the game hard, and what easier way to make the game hard than to make it obnoxious so much? Of course, we wouldn't be talking about this travesty if it weren't for the fact that it does, in fact, have a difficulty slider. There's easy, normal, and extreme. For a game that's more annoying than difficult, the slider doesn't really instill much hope, and no, easy mode is still annoying. Far easier to brute force, but that has its own issues. Mega Man games, or at least the 2D platformers, are all about overcoming really tough and, fair enough, challenges to feel the satisfaction of coming out on top. Being able to brute force and ignore the challenge takes away from the artistic vision of Mega Man. But hey, if you don't like brute force, it still isn't fair. Camera angles like this, attacks that home in on you like this, being able to miss this door that takes you to an unlockable character, and not being able to go back. Why does this game suck so bad? Being honest though, extreme is worse. Far worse. At least. With easy mode, you can ignore a lot of the tedium, and okay, it's still unfair and turns a Mega Man game into an absolute snooze, but if the alternative is this, no thanks. A lot of people like to act like easy modes are automatically bad, but don't forget that harder difficulties, or even just normal modes, can often turn out poorly too. I need a break after having to deal with X6 again. That's never fun. Well, let's talk positive, as I'm sure many of you are viewing is thinking that, according to me, the standard difficulty slider just can't work. And while that's mostly true, some go above and beyond the norm and almost make me appreciate them. Almost. I don't think I can look at them the same way after... Moving on. Persona 4 Golden gives you 5 difficulty options, ranging from very easy to very hard. And this by itself doesn't really do much for me, and actually seems like the perfect example of a pretty typical, kinda lazy, poorly done difficulty slider. I don't like it. I'll explain why later on. But in true Persona 4 fashion, its true colors reveal themselves specifically once you get access to the main menu. From here, you can adjust a lot of things, as is typical in an RPG, but one of them is the difficulty. Alright, cool. Not locking you into any difficulty. Nice. Wait, custom?
Stupid.
Yeah, that's right. You can adjust every single difficulty change to your liking. You want to play very hard, but think it's nonsense that your main character, Narukami, dying gets you a game over? Want to play on very easy, but think that enemies are a bit too much of a pushover? Want a tough combat system with the money needed to get the best equipment? Experimenting for a challenge run on very hard, but don't want to waste time starting your dungeons over whenever you die? You quite literally have free reign to do whatever you want with these difficulties at any time. This was a New Game Plus perk of the Vita version, and if I'm not mistaken, it wasn't available at all in the original PS2 game, but on the Steam release, you get it from the very beginning. This by itself makes the Steam version the ideal release. Forget the updated graphics, or the larger screen, or the dual audio. Okay, actually, dual audio is pretty important, I'll give you that one, but still, let the player choose exactly what kind of experience that they'll have. It doesn't have to be balanced. It just has to be enjoyable for them. The existing difficulty settings are simply a template. If the player doesn't want to bother changing the individual settings, well, they got you covered too. Persona 4 Golden is another one of my all-time favorites, so seeing it have the best difficulty slider, standard one at least, I've ever seen in any game makes me a very happy Kirby. It doesn't even clash with any of the artistic intent of the developers, so real big bonus points there. I'm thoroughly impressed with this. If something like this exists in any other game, please let me know. Or you can be like Fire Emblem Path of Radiance, where you get more or less bonus EXP depending on the difficulty that you're playing. Path of Radiance is an easy top 5 favorite game ever for me, but this specifically is hardly comparable to what Persona 4 Golden does. Not only is the BXP gain the same on normal as it is in hard, but the whole easy, normal, hard thing for Path of Radiance was, rather infamously, changed in the overseas release, and the Japanese got Maniac Mode, which is a difficulty that's harder than hard. And by the way, this is a classic example of the easy mode is way too simple, and the hard, Maniac mode is way too tedious. But, okay, yeah, on the topic of hard modes, what about hard modes? Now, going back to Kirby's Dream Land again, the normal mode is a great way to get players familiar with the game, ideally having an enjoyable yet pleasing experience, and having enough fun to make you want to play it again. Perfect conditions for hard mode, ready to test your mettle and see just how much of the game you really understand. And yeah, I know, extra mode is unlocked from the start, but you're only told how to get it if you actually finish the game, which alleviates all of the problems it would have if you had extra mode unlocked from the start, like a standard difficulty slider hard mode. I don't like that style. Now I'll explain why later on. Kirby has a very simple instance of this, but if done right, even a more complex game can go from being good to amazing with a good hard mode. Case in point, one of my favorite hard modes of any game, one that you have to unlock, mind you, is Fire Emblem The Binding Blade. Now, Binding Blade itself would easily be one of the most polarizing games in the series if more people actually liked it, but as it is, it has its fans and it has its detractors, but it's solidly ranked second on my all-time favorite Fire Emblem games. The difficulty progression, the simplicity, the depth, the massive unit density, even some units just really being garbage makes it so much more fun. looking at one of my favorite chapters in hard mode specifically, Chapter 1, let's look at normal mode first. None of your units have a particularly hard time here, except for Boris, who has a weapon that's weak to almost every enemy on the map. But still, he can take hits reasonably well. He'll have something going for him, and I mean, it's Boris. You ain't gonna get much better than Boris, am I right? Sure, Walt may not be the most impressive either, but he can chip enemies down so that Roy, Alan, and Lance can secure some solid EXP. Marcus can kill anything and everything, but
Look at how little EXP gets. He's an EXP thief at that speed.
there are a few different strategies that any player can use to finish the chapter, but to keep up with the quick gameplay in the background, I use a draft race strategy and have Marcus rescue Boars, chip enemies down. When rescuing, your skill and speed get lowered, and his speed is lowered enough to where he can't double any of the enemies, and Roy slowly but surely takes down the rest. This is super fun for a lot of reasons, but to be specific, it rewards knowledge of the game by allowing you to go crazy with whoever you want. Except, well, that might be a little tricky to pull off. Now, as we can see for hard mode, it's turn 1 and this strategy just straight up will not work. If Marcus rescues Boris, he deals next to no damage, his chances of dodging are lowered, and your other units don't deal nearly enough to actually finish anything off without putting themselves at risk. But if Marcus doesn't have anybody rescued, then he can stubble almost every enemy on the map, and with a normie old iron sword, leaves them with almost no HP left. Any of your units can get quick, easy EXP out of this, but there is risk involved, unlike with the normal mode. Marcus could keep getting hit, he could get a crit and steal EXP. Or, most realistically, if you aren't careful, then the enemies can overwhelm you fast. And hey, you can't forget about that village over there. I guess you could just have Boris or someone go visit, but I mean, how else are you supposed to kill the boss if you're not gonna do it with Boris? How you use and position your units, especially Marcus, is the key to clearing the chapter, and this is exactly how the difficulty should work. On normal, your first playthrough, the game teaches you a lot about its mechanics through letting you experiment and learn on your own, although the houses are there for players who need the extra help. On repeat playthroughs, you can get creative, and as I showed in the video, come up with consistent ways to quickly clear the map and get Roy started on not being useless for one whole chapter. Good for him. Then on hard, alright, Roy still only gets to be useful for one whole chapter, but it's also about understanding the game and its mechanics on a much deeper level. How should you tackle this immediate challenge and make every turn count? I'm not even talking about clearing it quickly or in as few turns as possible for an LTC, just talking about clearing the chapter at all. Strategizing, learning to love your ragtag team of fighters, and taking care to ensure none of these units die through the gameplay is the name of the game on both normal and hard. The vision of the developers is never sacrificed. The more astute viewer may also have noticed, though, that not only did I talk about Binding Blade a bit more than any other game so far, but also that it only has normal and hard mode. As it is, Binding Blade is often seen as one of the more unfair Fire Emblem games for newcomers, even on normal. And while I don't think it really deserves that reputation, it's definitely a game that you can appreciate more on replays than your first playthrough. But is there a game that specifically has an easy mode made to get total newcomers familiar with what they're playing, and then goes the Binding Blade route with the normal and hard mode? There are many, but my favorite example comes from a game you might not expect.
Good day for a well battle. It's on.
As it is, Cuphead is one of my favorite games of all time, but the way it handles difficulty deserves especially special praise, even by a standard as high as what Cuphead sets. See, when you fight any boss for the first time, you have two difficulties to select from, those being simple and normal. Normal is about what you'd expect, but the way the game handles its easy mode, especially for a game as difficult as this, is simply genius. You see, the story of the game is that Cuphead and Mugman need to beat down all of these bosses and get their souls via a contract and give them all to the devil.
And now they're fighting for their lives.
Well, Cuphead is the one who, as the song says, rolled the dice. the Mugman is the only innocent in this whole affair. Either way, you beat bosses, get their contracts, clear all of them in a given world to move on to the next. There is a caveat to this though, and it's that when you clear a fight on Simple, you don't get the boss's contract. You can still progress through the current world you're in, get coins from clearing the run and gun levels, and even progress to later worlds, where you can keep getting more coins to buy better equipment, but you can only get their contracts needed to beat King Dice and the Devil by clearing them on normal. This is the right way to do what something like Touhou does, locking content away from easy mode. Of course, you can ease your way into more difficult fights, like any easy mode difficulty, but if that's all it did, we wouldn't be here right now, because I don't really like that so much, and I'll explain why later on. But you can also get better equipment and a much better feel for the rest of the game before tackling the normal mode. There's a constant through line in getting better at Cuphead in using the, as it's named in the game, simple mode, actually learning the game and getting better equipment and such, compared to Touhou, where the easy mode exists just to bait newcomers in and lock content away until they get good enough. To me, it feels like Touhou should just get rid of the easy mode, whereas Cuphead was actually, if only partially, built with it in mind. I'm fully aware that Cuphead is locking content behind the simple mode, but to give Cuphead even more credit, you're given the context right away that what you need to do is get contracts from every boss before the final showdowns.
Bring me those contracts, come on, bring them to the king. If you haven't finished your task, haven't worked assiduously, no, I cannot let you pass, don't you mess with me.
What, the story is actually complementing and interacting with the gameplay? You know, how only a video game can? Insanity! No way! Video games are over! Newcomers and casuals can just have an enjoyable time, get totally decked out on good equipment, and then go back and clear fights on normal mode. And hey, worst case, you can just ignore the simple mode and go to town regularly, as it were. Cuphead also does have an expert mode unlocked after beating the game, and while I think this is much less inventive and cool than the simple normal dynamic, the unlockable harder difficulty is not only a great reward for those who've cleared the game, a la Binding Blade, but it's also really funny to think about, considering Cuphead is already so hard. Alright. I've stalled for long enough, and I guess it's finally, later, so here goes. Why don't I like the standard difficulty slider with every difficulty unlocked from the start? I said earlier that Path of Radiance is one of my favorite games ever, and it doesn't get much more standard than what Path of Radiance has to offer. What's so wrong about having easy, normal, and hard, or some variant unlocked from the start? Well, I personally think it's just a very lazy way around designing a game to be easy or difficult, but we, you and me, creator and viewer, YouTuber and subscriber, need to look at the bigger picture. Why do I specifically think it's bad? And I want to approach this strictly from a game design perspective. Although, I'll fully admit that the fact that it costs devs time, money, and resources, among other things, is absolutely a drawback. Everyone crying for every game to have an easy mode, please remember, making games is a job, and like most jobs, it's miserable. To me, and I know this is very old-fashioned, the standard difficulty slider shouldn't really even exist to begin with. You shouldn't have to increase or decrease the difficulty of a game in order to get people to enjoy it. I know I, rightfully, ragged on Mega Man X6 earlier, but to use one of my all-time favorite games on the reverse, Mega Man X2 has no difficulty slider. The difficulty comes from fairly designed stages, difficult side content, and very natural difficulty scaling. The player is eased into the action with an easy intro stage, of course, so they have time to get a handle on the controls and such. There's a lot to X2 that makes it one of my favorite games. It's easily my favorite X game, by the way. But I must stress that nobody should expect total newcomers, or people who aren't very good at games, to master the game immediately. There is a speedrun trick like this that even I, someone who's put over 40 hours into this game, can't do yet. That's fine. It's a tough yet fair game that keeps you coming back because, on top of everything else that's good about it, you always feel like you can clear levels. There's 1-ups, health restoration, your base pew pew, your charge shot. You can play fast, reckless, and efficient, or slow, safe, and comfortable. The game is designed really well for anyone of any style to get enjoyment out of. Now, I'm not saying that you have to like X2. I think it's pretty undeniable that it's better than X6, but that's a really low bar we're setting, yeah. All I'm really saying here is that a difficulty slider isn't necessary at all to get people to enjoy a game. That said, I know there are people who don't want to be challenged by a game at all, and for them, a difficulty slider for something like X2 would work wonders, right? No! Think about artistic vision, please! The goal, the final product that a team of people came together to create is far more important than anything else. If you want a Mega Man X game to be easy, you're the one who is going to make it easy, not them, and you make it easy by getting better. I respect that. You can't pick up and drop the game like a fad and still enjoy it. You appreciate it for the art that it is, and then you can drop it like a fad if you feel like it. If you want a game that's on the easy side, was made to cater to all kinds of skill levels, and still doesn't have a difficulty slider, I mean, I basically just described Kirby right there. I don't know, has anyone who's played Planet Robobot, for example, thought, this would benefit from having difficulties? Well, I actually know there are people that think it would benefit from having a hard mode, but well, Meta Nightmare Returns exists, first things first. Less health restoration, speedrun focused, more boss fights, all that good stuff. And yeah, Meta Knight's insanely good, but so is Kirby. It's all good. That said, those people could also look at Kirby like the opposite of something like X2. Tough game, but take your time and play at your own pace, and you'll learn how to make it easier. Planet Robobot is pretty slow paced, but it's also very exploration heavy, with a focus on solving puzzles for goodies. If you actually want to unlock everything, fully clear the game, and maybe, play well with abilities and have an experience that feels like it's entirely your own, you're in for a good time. And it goes without saying, but the True Arena does exist for that hardcore challenge. I'm not crazy about Planet Robobot's True Arena, but I can't deny it's legitimately tough. Of course, Kirby's not the only platformer or even Nintendo game that's like this, but what gives Kirby an edge is that his defining trait has major appeal for everyone. I am, of course, talking about the copy abilities. I talk about Parasol Kirby a lot because Parasol is my favorite ability. How complex. I get a fair amount of comments every now and then from people saying that they always liked Parasol, but they never knew it was as good as I make it out to be in my videos in terms of actual gameplay, its movement, damage, etc. They just like that Kirby carries something as basic and mundane as a parasol around and kills enemies with it. And hey, that's part of why I love Parasol as much as I do, but that being your main reason to like it, it's totally perfectly fine. I like it more for its mobility and damage than anything, but you know what? Not only is that also perfectly fine, I also like it smacking people with a parasol. It's just kind of funny. Oh, I just talked about Parasol Kirby instead of something relevant, huh? Whoops, classic me. Well, I yacked for a while as is, so to regurgitate a little bit, the way that I play Parasol and the way that the average person played Parasol is the #1 way that Kirby uses a difficulty to its advantage, the player-chosen difficulty. Think back to what I said for Persona 4 Golden, except there's no slider. You want to whack people with your Parasol and laugh at such a weird thing being used as a weapon? Go right ahead. Want a perfectly spaced Parasol swing so that Dedede can never get close, and every time you swing, his long invulnerability periods have just ran dry? Do that too. This isn't limited to Parasol, of course. Now look at any Kirby speedrun to see what I mean, and just replace Parasol with ability of choice. Basically, I made this whole video to say that I love Parasol Kirby a lot, but I really don't like difficulty sliders, but if they're done in a unique way, they can be cool. Easy mode, hard mode, doesn't matter, just get on Kirby's level. Simple, right? Genuinely, though, a part of the reason why I made the video to begin with is to showcase that easy modes are not inherently bad and could even work for someone who plays games more seriously. Check out speedrunners. They're some of the finest at their craft, and typically play on lower difficulties. But you can't just put an easy mode into a game and it fixes all of your entry problems. And if you're going to have a difficulty slider in the game, please try to do something more inventive than a very, very lazy, easy, normal, hard. That really doesn't do good for anybody. I mean, straight up, some games just shouldn't have easy modes or difficulty sliders. There are many reasons for that, and that's fine. Also, just play Kirby.
Why not take a little quick break and come back for more? Or then come back for more. Or please come back for more.